Welcome to the Christ in Private Practice podcast, where we empower Christian counselors and share stories of God's work in mental health. I'm your host, Camille McDaniel, licensed professional counselor. Let's dive in. Today, I get to sit down with a wonderful therapist who is very lighthearted and put up with a little of my before show shenanigans that maybe I'll explain a little later, but we are going to talk today to Veronica O'Brien. Veronica is a licensed professional counselor and life coach in the state of New Jersey, and she's also a certified integrated mental health professional and certified informed sex therapist. Now, as I was sharing with her before, it's so wonderful to sit and talk with mental health therapists who are practicing Christ-centered counseling services, because people have such wonderful lived experiences, and Veronica is no exception. So let me take a moment to introduce you further. So Veronica is a naturalized citizen of the United States, and she lived in New Jersey, or does live in New Jersey, has for the last 21 years, but she's actually a native of St. Lucia, St. Lucia, West Indies, which is part of the Eastern Caribbean islands. Her passion is for counseling, and it actually began in a local church that was on the island of St. Lucia, where she grew up. It's called Bethel Tabernacle. So she had an experience where she had friends, she had family, she had strangers asking her for Christian advice from everything from relationships to career development and so on and so forth. And so what eventually happened was it just kind of like made her think a little bit. And I think that kind of nugget came forward later on, but the seed was planted. And so she was a member of International Student Christian Fellowship, and then God used her to help other students. And then after several years in the helping profession and teaching profession, she actually felt called to mission work. And so she signed up for a year-long commitment to missionary work through a organization called Operation Mobilization, which is, get this, a floating missionary ship. How cool is that, right? Okay, and so she worked with people from around the globe, and she spoke at conferences. She has worked with churches to help equip them to share the gospel. And it wasn't until she actually became ill herself that she started to discover the importance of self-care, and she really started to make a commitment to doing better to integrate that philosophy into her everyday life. And so then, after a period of time, she kind of had these various experiences. She felt very strongly called to pursuing a degree in psychology, and she did that. And then later she went to get her graduate degree, and she did that as well, and graduated summa cum laude from Grand Canyon University. Well, that's where she got her master's in professional counseling. So today she works in private practice. She provides telemental health services to families, to individuals, to couples. She is happily married, has been happily married for 16 years. She's cat parents. She said they are cat parents to Buddy and to, is it Tiger?
Tiger.
Okay. And,
My baby.
And she enjoys, she enjoys listening to, worship music, and she enjoys, movement, and it sounds like, and I told her before we were taping, I was like, you have definitely some lived life experience, right? One thing I did leave out, and I just want to also just share, because some people may be in New Jersey, or some people may have some referrals that they need to give to New Jersey. So let me also just pop in and tell you that she does specialize with anxiety disorders, with body-focused repetitive behavior, or BFRM. She also focuses and specializes in binge eating disorders, trauma and stress-related disorders, depression, grief, and loss. Thank you, Veronica, for taking this time to speak with me on the Christ in Private Practice podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Camille, for having me. It is my absolute honor and pleasure and privilege.
Well, today you're going to be talking with us about the importance of self-care for Christian counselors to prevent burnout. And that is definitely a very important topic for us. Full transparency to the audience. You know, I was telling Veronica before we actually started taping that this is a perfect topic because I was not practicing good self-care. Last night I was up super late doing some home improvement work, and one of the therapists at the practice was telling me like, "Oh my gosh, you look so tired." And so I told Veronica, I'm like, I was not with it because I did not practice good self-care. So here's Veronica waiting so patiently in the waiting room for us to start. And I am putting on makeup because I'm like, I am not going to look tired. This airs on YouTube. And then she's like, hey, I'm here. I can see you getting ready. And I'm like, see, my mind was somewhere else. And so I told her, I'm like, this is actually perfect timing because I am going to need to really lean into whatever it is that Veronica is sharing. Everyone needs a reminder, no matter how long we have been in the field of mental health. We may give this information to other people, but sometimes we need to listen to it for ourselves. So, so with that being said, you know, I am going to jump right on into it and just ask, all right, so then tell us what are some of the signs of burnout, that Christian counselors should be aware of, especially those that might like overlook it because they're so focused in the spiritual side of their practice.
Yes. So, first of all, I just want to normalize how normal your experience is. And right, like we're not talking about perfectionism because a lot of people get very nervous when they talk about self-care and like, oh my God, something else I have to do.
Yes.
But I always say God knows we're human and he remembers we're dust. And I think sometimes we have to remember that and remind ourselves of that too. So I think, first of all, I always want to kind of define what burnout is, right? What that is. And according to the World Health Organization, they've actually defined it as a syndrome, right? And I'm just going to read what they have, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
They've defined it as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed.
Wow.
It is, right? Like,
wow. Yes. Yeah.
And that kind of like puts it in perspective in the frame, and they're saying three dimensions that it kind of incorporates. It's feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, right? Feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. So this kind of like broad, or specific in certain situations, definitions of what burnout can look like and feel like.
Yes.
And so to clarify, like to just understand your question in terms of what it might look like for a Christian counselor, I think it can look like different things. It can, depending on the day and the situation, especially if you're like, if you're a very new Christian counselor, it can look like, over, wanting to get everything right and then spending a lot of time, in preparation and kind of not trusting the Lord. To kind of like get everything right. And so your focus is on being that perfect, which is understandable because you want to do such a good job. And then you can kind of lose focus on who's the master counselor. Right. And then so for more seasoned counselors or counselors who've been doing this a while, sometimes it can look like, you can be a little bit neglectful of your scheduling. You can overschedule, overextend
Right,
yourself,
right.
right?
I'm
You
just gonna
might
say
say,
ouch. I'm just gonna go ahead. That's fine. You go. That's okay. You can call me out. It's fine.
I'm just going,
Right.
and I'm also speaking from experiences I have gone through,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Personalities and so on, and how the Lord has had to sometimes gently, sometimes, a brick,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I think it can look like that, like sometimes avoiding trainings, procrastinating, putting off things, because trainings are important. They kind of help, especially ethical trainings, I think they kind of help, refocus you. So I think these are just a few, signs that you can begin to see, kind of even neglecting just your personal relationships, right?
Yes.
Friendships,
Yes.
right? Spending time with your spouse or your loved ones or your friends, kind of just making the work the focus, right? Neglecting church, oh, I can't get to Bible study because I have this, and that, and so I think it affects so many different aspects of our lives, like physical, emotional,
Yes.
spiritual, mental. Yeah.
That's good because as you start to identify and lay out for us all of the different signs that we need to look out for, whether we're seasoned or whether we're new, that kind of takes me into the next thing that I wanted to ask because you talk about exhaustion and putting in maybe too many hours, extending our boundaries beyond what is healthy for us. We notice that, I mean, the world does kind of glorify hustle culture, and people have all these different sayings about, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I gotta
Yes.
get this now. And all of that, that push almost to
Yeah.
show how productive you are and really
Yeah.
how you're really just kind of exhausting your body, mentally, physically, spiritually. And so I guess could you, tell us a little bit about how we can actually be comfortable adopting a counterculture approach
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
self-care that really prioritizes God's guidance over the society's expectations.
Yeah, I just have to say some of these questions was so great and just so important, I think, to what we're dealing with as Christians in today's culture, not just as counselors, but in today's culture. There's so much of a mixing of the world and the church.
Yes.
Sometimes it's very hard to decipher it. And I think part of that during my devotions this week, it's amazing how the Holy Spirit just aligned certain principles. And one of the things that came up over the last couple of weeks for me, just personally, was having a conviction or a mission statement, right?
Okay. Yes.
Of kind of purposing and re-evaluating, what do I really believe,
Wow.
right?
Okay. Wow. Yes. Yes.
What is it
Mm-hmm.
that I really, what are my values? When we work with our clients, we always, if you're using whatever your orientation is, if it's behavioral or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you always go to, what are your beliefs? What are your core values,
Right.
right? Those are the things that drive us. And it's so easy to get caught up with, I grew up in a Caribbean family, and that's my mom's favorite thing is, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Oh, look, right? I know a lot of people say that one. Yes.
When like there's too much to get done,
Yes.
right? And sometimes because, we love the Lord and we want to kind of do so many things for God. And it's coming from a good place, but there's also that balance. So I think realigning yourself with, whose voice am I believing? Whose report am I
Yeah.
going to believe? Am I going to believe that this counterculture of, I'm going to work my fingers to the bone and then when I'm dead, it's all done? Or no,
Right.
right? And I
Right.
think that's going to slow us down and realign us. Like, God is God, the supreme being of the universe.
Hmm.
Then after that, what is it that I can go to him and say, okay, what is it that's important for me to be able to do and focus on? And that might look like different things,
Yes.
different seasons.
Yeah. So see, in what you're saying there, I'm hearing it's like instead of sometimes us trying to do a little too much, trying to drive the whole entire ship and direct everything, we're
Yeah.
not sometimes checking in to say, Lord, is this
Yes.
what you would have me to do? So that we
Yes.
can stay on track and
Yes.
and not, burn out. Okay. So then what about for those who they're like, okay, I'm, and I have my clients too, right? Because they're like, okay, I'm trying this self-care, but there is so much that has to be done, and they kind of feel bad about taking time off or slowing down.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's the other thing, because I think about this at anytime, summertime, holidays, sick leave,
Sure.
we get fearful of slowing down because we are worried that it might actually hinder our growth in
Yes.
practice because bills are real. We know
Oh
God
yes.
is definitely in charge of
Oh yes.
everything, but in our
Oh yeah.
humanness, sometimes we do worry about like, okay, if I take this time off and then something happens or I don't pay this bill or I have fewer clients, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Like,
Yeah.
what advice could you give counselors out there about that?
Yeah. So I think that's so important. And my advice is going to be based on the word of God and based on experiences that I've gone through, which what the Lord has said to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a season like that. I only launched my practice about 9 months ago. And
Usually,
of those 9 months, I had to take a few months for myself. And that looked like me kind of saying to clients who wanted to come with me,
right.
I the ethical thing for me to do was to give myself a couple months to address whatever was going on medically so that I could show up appropriately. And that
Way.
looks like planning, right? It looks like
Yeah.
planning ahead, sitting, with your spouse or whomever it is and looking at, right, like what is the financial situation? What can
Mm.
we, some people don't like it when I say this, but let's look at the prophet Isaiah. He said to the woman, what do you have in your hand?
Mm.
Right? And so sometimes we're looking for more, and the
Yeah.
Lord is saying, maybe you have like
It's
500
already
pairs of
there.
shoes, and
Yes.
maybe you can get rid of some of those,
Yes.
right? Right? To bring in some income. And so,
Okay.
what is practically, you have to be able to look and say, okay, is this my only source, right? Is it just
Right.
meeting with the client is my only source? What else do I have in my hand?
Yes, that's a
Okay?
good one. And sometimes that's a hard one because,
Yeah.
just just real
Yeah.
humanness, we have either experienced it or we've heard from our clients or heard from friends where it's like, I want to be able to take the break, not give up any of my current patterns or any of my current choices. And Lord, I want you to make it happen. And he can do whatever he wants to because he's God. But sometimes when it's not benefiting us, sometimes he is saying, hey, what's that spending looking like?
Yeah.
Hey, did you absolutely need to go there at this point in time?
Yeah.
And so that can get hard. That gets
It
hard. So
can.
but that's great advice. Like you're saying, hey, there has to be some planning that goes into place. And I know I have to, I am so sorry to the audience. I cannot remember the scripture. I will try and look it up as the podcast goes on, but it's like what man creates a building or business, what man starts to build without accounting for his materials.
That's
Like,
right. Yeah.
so as we are, going through building our practice, right? And also having to take care of our body and stop. As you're saying to us, Veronica, it's like you also gotta have a plan. You
Yeah.
gotta kind of outline for these things because it's not good for us to just kind of skip and say, you know what, I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's like, no, we need to be able to rest now. Yeah.
And I get, if I may just share from personal experience,
Absolutely.
um, you know, I had to take a job that paid significantly less,
Yes.
uh, time,
Yes.
just because that's where I was at in my life, and that's what I needed. That's what I needed to do. And, I had to sit down with my husband and say, hey,
Hmm.
this is where we are, and how can we move forward? And so it's practical, but it's also personal for me. And, I had to kind of pray. And so we had to make some tough decisions. And I think you have to always, Jesus, when we look to Jesus and we look to the biblical principles, there's always a cost.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes.
There's always a cost.
Mhm.
It's either, I always say this to my clients, I said, it's hard either way, but you have to choose your hard. Like it's hard.
Yes.
It's like hard. It's right. It's like, and what I'm saying, I know it's not easy because I've been there. Some scripture
Hmm.
verses, I had, I put it on my notepad on my
Yes.
phone because I didn't want to forget. Like, be anxious for nothing. Look,
Yeah.
you're worrying about the fields and this, and you're worrying about all of this, and you're worrying and worrying, which is taking away from your peace, which is part of your spiritual self-care,
Yes.
right? And then you're
Yes.
not trusting God. And then, so it's really like a reevaluation of, again, whom am I really believing? You know?
Right.
Oh, it's like
So
a,
that's good. That's
yeah,
good. That kind of even rolls into kind of looking at like, how can we integrate our faith? And what I'm hearing you say is,
right.
there's a lot of sitting with God, right? There's there is a lot of talking to him about what is the plan and, and praying and letting him hold all of our concerns and
Yeah,
all of our questions and just
yeah,
pose them, lay them at his feet. I did find that verse. It's in Luke chapter 14, verse 28. So who will build a building without not first sitting down to count the expense? Whether he has the things to complete it. So it's even saying, as we are in private practice, hey, are we looking at our expenses, our business plans to say, hey, how do I account for sick leave? How do I account
yeah,
for vacation?
yeah, yeah,
How do I account for
absolutely.
sabbatical? Whatever the
Yeah,
sabbatical is for you.
yeah,
So I think that's good. And when it comes to then like integrating our faith, like I'm hearing you, as you're talking, and it's really about being able to also take our hands off of it. Sometimes we forget that God is mighty. Not that we forget. I hate to say that like that. I don't want the audience to come for me.
I think that,
But but you know, but it's kind of like while you're sitting there worrying, you're like, well, I can't take off for the holidays. What will I do? Like I gotta make, and it's like, do you really believe that he wants you to work to till like, you have no more health or that you're stressed out or and do you not think that he couldn't bring people your way right when you need it so that you can have what you need? Did he not promise that he would supply for you or
all
no?
your needs, all your
Right.
needs,
So
all your
so
needs.
sometimes
Yeah,
we find that in integrating our faith actually means like really practicing our faith, which I think
yes.
goes back to what you said, you got to sit down and write down what do you believe? Um, yeah, that's,
And yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, that's good. I was just thinking about what you had shared earlier. So no, please go ahead.
No, it's so true. It's really, and I don't want the audience to think that it's some Pollyanna or this is not practical. No, it is, because Jesus was the God, is the God of the practical. He took
Yes.
he took look at the miracle of the five of the fish and the two loaves,
Right.
you
Right.
know? And I
Right.
was listening to a pastor the other day, and he really put it, because in my mind, I'm from the Caribbean, and fish are huge. Like
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
baby, like little fish, sardine. But this guy was saying that they're like tiny little things, and that Jesus took that and blessed it and fed a crowd. So if we believe, like, this is the God we serve, can he
Hmm.
take what is little and multiply it?
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
even in
absolutely.
our mistake. even in
Right.
our mistakes, that he can restore. In Joel
Mm,
2, it talks about him being able to restore the years the cankerworm have
yes.
God is our backup plan, our foreplan.
Okay.
He is the plan,
Look, look,
you know?
l- l- let me just tell you all. Look, Veronica is on a roll. She is just touching on she's touching on all the good stuff because I really and truly, I promise you, I was going to ask her, I was going to say, how do we understand our identity in Christ? And like, our mission, our gifts and
Holy
talents,
Spirit.
to prevent burnout. And it's like, you have to know who you believe. You got to know who you serve. And not just, we're not just saying it like, you just got to know, but no, literally, who is he? Who does the Bible say that he is? Who do other
Yeah,
people describe him? Because we can't even capture in words, the totality of
yeah,
God. But there are many, many words that have been used as people have experiences with him to show that he will protect, he will provide, he will heal, he will do, all the things that you're needing. And so as we move forward and we talk about being Christian counselors and building our practices, we really have to lean into hearing from him is what I'm hearing you say, and knowing who he is and who we serve,
yeah,
and trusting that he can show up, that
yeah,
there is nothing too hard for him.
yeah,
Absolutely. um
absolutely.
and that's, I can even think of, even in my practice, where there were times where it's like, building up the practice and being like, oh man, this is going to be interesting, the holidays are coming around, or this is going to be interesting, summertime is coming around. And times where I've had to like take a break, I really maybe was burned out or something, and he had people out of nowhere calling for appointments that I didn't even see that coming, or referrals that I made connections with like a year ago, all of a sudden,
Yeah,
sending people my way. Just like, not to doubt that he can't take that situation and handle it. He handles many, many more things as well. So, okay.
yeah,
So then let me kind of pivot a little to ask you about like the comparison that we also struggle with as it
sure.
relates to self-care and our practices. So as counselors, as Christian counselors, how can we avoid that trap of comparing our progress
Yeah,
to the success that we see others, especially,
yeah.
in a world that basically tells us, worth has to be about visible
Mhm,
achievements.
mhm.
So how do we help ourselves not get into that as we are practicing self-care, which sometimes may cause us to have to slow down and practice that the Lord will provide and all of that. But we see other people and they're talking about, oh, I'm full, or, it's like,
Yeah,
or, oh, I'm doing this or that or the other.
yeah,
What can we
yeah.
do about that?
That's such a human thing.
Mhm.
And I think the first thing that comes up for me is to just be honest with the Lord and be honest with ourselves and just say, you know what? I'm a little bit of a green-eyed monster right now. Like I'm
Yes.
just,
Yes.
I'm not, practicing love right now, and I want these things, and I want to be able, I'm not even playing. I'm happy for my sister or brother in Christ or just somebody else. I
Right.
want that to be me.
Right.
And I think being honest with ourselves and being honest with the Lord, and then just saying, God, work on that, because I think that's an opportunity. Like, it's natural. There's that human side of us that wants to excel
Yes.
and wants, right? Like, you have to kind of recognize that. Um, but you also have to say to yourself, what is the comparison showing me about an area that I might be neglecting that the Lord wants to work, right?
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so okay. You're touching on something good that I don't even really hear as part of a self-care practice always. And that's ask the Lord to search my heart and
Yes.
then show me what I need to work on,
Yes.
because
And
that is
that's
self-care.
spiritual self-care,
Yeah,
right? So I
wow.
didn't break
Yeah.
down the different types of self-care, but there's spiritual, there's emotional, there's mental, there's physical types of self-care. So when sometimes people think about self-care, they think about going to the salon and getting their, going to the barber shop,
Mm-hmm.
or, you
Yes.
know, body right for summer, or
Yes. Yes.
a summer body. I
Right.
had a client who used to say, I just want a summer body. I was like, hey. You And all that's part of the physical side of it. But the comparison really speaks to what's going on spiritually and emotionally that can have a negative effect on our mental health as counselors.
Yes.
Because if you're comparing, you're out of, it's almost like you're bringing in and inviting that spirit of kind of like condemnation. It's very human.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
forget the
Yeah.
story in the Bible where what the kings, there was this comparison because like he was jealous that God had appointed Saul to be king, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so we have to, I'm not a Bible scholar, I quote scriptures, I'm in perimenopause, I don't always remember. I don't always just keep it at 100% real.
That, but you know what? That's okay, because thankfully, with the advent of Google, we can look those up. They got all the Bible scriptures out there. We can verify.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm not pulling things out of thin air, but
Right.
I think it's understandable. And knowing that I really believe in just having a real relationship with the Lord and coming to Him and saying, I'm struggling with this. I see my
Right.
friends getting on these podcasts. I want to be able to do that. And a
Yes.
lot of times it's from a good perspective. It's from, I want to be able to share and I want to be able to do this. But you have to really kind of look at and say, okay, what else is going on with me that I'm, you know, who am I really looking at? Right?
Yeah.
Because if we believe, right, if we believe that God is omniscient and omnipresent and He is all knowing and all powerful, that we can look at someone who's doing well and we can say, wow, I'm so happy for them. I know, God, you're using this to work on me.
Yes, that's good.
You,
Okay. That's
you know,
another perspective too, that instead of us just looking at it and finding ourselves comparing, we can also look at it and recognize if it brings something up within us that is not aligned with what he would have for us to be thinking or feeling. We can also be thankful that we had that awareness to say, oh Lord, I'm recognizing something, work
yeah,
on me, help me. What is this? What's coming up? Is this fear? Is this something else that I
yeah,
am wanting or believe that I won't be able to get? What's happening that's causing me to have this reaction? Search me, and then create create a new, thought,
yeah,
a new feeling, so that I can better align with you. Oh yeah,
yeah,
this is so helpful. This is
yeah.
this is this is so
Oh, I'm
real.
glad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, and what are some ways that we can just kind of find our balance in it? Just some practical strategies in order to just maintain this healthy life balance. We've mentioned a few, but if we can kind of like put it right lined up for people so that they can just be like, okay, what are some strategies? Because we have mentioned a few things.
Yeah. So I always think, practically, if you're a Christian counselor and you might need to get some extra counseling, even if it's once every few months,
Hmm.
do that. I think that's really important to helping keep you centered too.
Hmm.
Also, like, continuing with peer supervision, like having a support group of peers that you can turn to that can really, pray with you,
Yeah.
and kind of just you bounce ideas, this is what I'm going through, what do you think about this kind of thing. And like you were sharing, I think it was off, you have a close friend that's very honest. That's
Yes.
important, so practically I would say also reevaluate our boundaries, like know what those are, right?
Yes.
Like a
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
times when we overextend is because, again, we grew up with the value of, work, work, work to the bone until you
Yeah.
die.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
so kind of pulling that back in can be hard. So you kind of have to reevaluate what is important. You know, how
Yes.
much time am I giving to work over just sleep? You know,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
as we get older, I have a passion for the Gen X group
Mhm.
because that's, that's kind
Mhm.
of my area. But as we get older, things are changing. So, you
Absolutely.
have to prioritize sleep, check your sleep hygiene. What is that like? Are you getting quality sleep? Are you spending a lot of time binging on the phone? So kind of like, binge watching TVs, just practical steps. How much nowadays the phone gives you, you use your phone, 3 hours more you did last week. Okay, why? Why am I using my phone
Yes.
hours more? Right? And so thinking through what's kind of the clues that you're getting throughout your day. Are you fatigued? Are you irritable emotionally? Are you kind of like snapping at yourself when people are
Yes.
rude, right? Like those. So those are kind of some signs that can give you clues that you can start to kind of apply practical changes. How are you eating? What's your nutrition like, right? Like,
Good
are we,
night.
what?
Good
Well,
night.
listen, that's
Right.
been one been working on for a while.
Right. So, as you know, as believers, it's like all of this
Yeah.
goes back to certain scriptures because even him saying in the Bible that our body is a temple, and we have to just be mindful of how we treat ourselves and everything that you're saying is so spot on. You know, we need to set some new some new goals. It sounds like, we just because
My God, how much exercise am I getting?
yes,
Being a counselor, you're sitting all the time, recently I had to get a sit to it's not working out very well, but a sit to stand laptop holder
whoa,
just kind of get some, circulation in throughout the day. And so
yeah,
kind of incorporates if you have a break or a client cancels, let's use that time to get out for a walk,
yes,
or do some stretching in the office,
yeah,
you
that's a
know,
good idea.
and put on some Kirk Franklin if that's still, if he's still hot.
Right.
There's
Whoever you
whoever,
find, right?
whatever your gospel zhuzh is, and dance, that make a joyful noise to the
Yes,
Lord and move your body whilst you do that. So those are some very practical, I think, and important things that we can do to kind of just take care of ourselves, you
absolutely.
know? Yeah.
That's all good. And we're going to hopefully all take in everything that you've shared with us today and really start putting them in practice. And maybe people can kind of like, just jot these things down, keep
Yeah.
each other accountable. If you have friends, if you have, and whatever support system, if you don't have a support system, put that on the list, start,
Right.
seeing about that, and so yeah, that's going to be good. Okay, so Veronica, you have really helped us so much and shared so
So
much. Please tell people where can they find you? I know you have your website, so whatever you're doing at this time,
yeah.
share that with us. Where can people locate you?
Thank you. It's just been my pleasure and privilege to be here and share with you guys. So, you can find me on Facebook, Veronica O'Brien Counseling LLC. I have my website, veronicao'briencounseling.com. Or you could go to therapyinnewjersey.com, shorter and quicker to get to.
Okay.
I'm also on Psychology Today and Therapy for Christians. I'm on that network. And I recently joined Headway, I'm excited to say, because
Okay.
I'm an out of network. Usually I'm out of network self-pay with clients,
Okay.
but I recently joined Headway to make it a little bit more accessible for those clients who need to use insurance.
Okay.
So that's where you could find me, and you could always reach out to me, Veronica at veronicao'briencounseling.com. I do have limited slots because I'm very mindful about my schedule and quality of care I give to patients. I used to
Mm-hmm.
overschedule myself. I don't do that anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Self-care,
yeah,
practicing it, talking
yeah,
it and
doing
practicing
my
it.
best, doing my
Okay.
best.
Well, thank you so much. And we
Thank
look
you.
forward to maybe even talking to you again in the future.
Thank you.
Okay,
This was fun. Thank you,
thank you.
Camille.